Hello, this is Gary Van Warmerdam. In this video, I want to give you an introduction into what's involved in changing a belief, and specifically core beliefs. And first, I want to paint a picture of why this might be important. And then I'll cover all the elements that make up a belief that need to be changed. And then it'll be clear why maybe some of your attempts in the past weren't successful at changing emotional reactions or negative thinking or behaviors that were belief-driven. Because if you don't get all of these elements changed, that belief and the habit, emotional reaction, negative thinking often returns. So the first question is, why look into these beliefs? Core beliefs are at the cause of many of our emotional reactions. So if you have jealousy, fear, insecurity, anger, sabotaging behaviors, if you have controlling behavior in a relationship, procrastination, poor money management, not able to stay in a diet and exercise regimen, your core beliefs are driving those poor sabotaging behaviors. Negative thinking itself often is arising from your belief system. That voice of an inner critic, harsh self-judgment, fear of what other people think of you. If you want to change any of these things, emotional reactions, your behaviors, and your negative thinking, core beliefs are typically at the cause, if not in whole, then at least in part. So when we look at the structure of what makes up a belief, we have to look at basically 5 different elements that make up the belief, and sometimes 6, that drive the thought, behavior, emotional reaction. So let's look at the thought, I have to be right. And this thought might also show up as a behavior, where we try and one-up with people, or we argue, and maybe it causes unnecessary arguments with your partner. It can make us an unbearable person to be with. So as we investigate the different elements of this example, I have to be right, we're going to say that the thought is I have to be right. The behavior is acting out that way. And in this case, the belief we'll just say is I have to be right. But it might not always look this way. The thought might be people are stupid, they don't listen to me. And underneath that might be the belief I have to be right. And from there, we have to look for the next component, which is core beliefs. We'll find thoughts and associations at deeper levels. For instance, people should listen to me. I'm smart, I know what I'm talking about. And if they don't listen, they are morons. Then there might also be other avenues of that. If I'm not right, then I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'm stupid. I hate to be wrong, I hate to be stupid. I hate that people might see me as stupid. If I'm stupid, I'm worthless, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough. And if people see me as a worthless failure that's not good enough, I am worthless, I am a failure, I am not good enough. The surface level, I have to be right, is actually masking this underlying core belief, I'm stupid, I'm worthless, I'm a failure. Is this possible to have? Absolutely. Even if you work at a high level as a lawyer, a doctor, a CEO, you can have this conflicting negative thought in your head and an internal story of fear of failing and a fear of not being good enough. So when we try and change the belief or the behavior of having to be right, we have to dig down to these core belief levels that might be the very opposite. So far in this example, the surface level belief is I have to be right. When we look down at the core beliefs, we find a number of them. And then the third component we get is emotion. There's the pride and worthiness in feeling that you're right. There's a fear of being wrong, fear people won't listen to me, fear they won't respect me. There can be a righteousness and an anger and a judgment towards people who don't listen. There's this feeling of unworthiness and self-loathing, self-hate for being wrong, for being stupid. All of these emotions are connected to and part of each layer of these beliefs, right down to the core belief. And if we're going to change the belief, the emotions we have connected to each one of these beliefs have to change as well. A belief is more than just the thought or behavior. It includes the emotions that are associated and very much drive these behaviors and thoughts. The next element that has to change is faith. Not the religious version of faith, but this conviction, certainty, this confidence, this knowing. Thoughts by themselves are pretty empty. And this kind of conviction in a certain thought like I'm worthless generates unworthiness. The conviction in I'm right generates a feeling of pride. This conviction justifies anger, and they deserve it in that judgment. So the force of conviction we put behind our thinking is part of our personal power. It's a force that we have to take out of these ideas to turn that convincing thought into an empty thought. One of the ways that you address faith is to apply skepticism and doubt to these thoughts. How you do that is through the next element of the belief system that has to change, which is identity. And often we can put this in terms of ego, as a false sense of ourselves in our mind. With each one of these thoughts, I have to be right, there's an identity. A fear of being wrong, that's an image of us being wrong. A fear people won't listen, another aspect that our mind projects of ourselves. I'm superior to others who are morons. This is an elevated image of ourselves. I'm afraid of being stupid, I am worthless, I am a failure. All of those phrases define ourselves as an identity and seeing ourselves as that is who we are. And when we believe I am worthless, part of us at some level is feeling that's what we are, believing that's what we are, and part of our mind is thinking and creating thoughts from that level and imagining other people see us that way. This is part of the 95% of what our unconscious mind is doing. And the 5% we're aware of is the part where we notice we're trying to be right to cover it up. But it doesn't work. No matter how much we're right, underneath that belief of feeling worthless and stupid is still there. So one of the critical steps in changing these beliefs is to step out of this false identity, and in this case, multiple false versions of ourselves, into a neutral observer perspective. And from that neutral witness observer, we can apply skepticism and not believe these thoughts, and our faith comes out, and this helps reduce the emotion. So changing this perspective is a key step, and one of the first steps that has to be made to effectively change this whole belief system. One more element that sometimes comes into play when changing a belief-driven behavior, belief-driven emotional reaction, is that sometimes beliefs are so strong that they're not just ideas in our head, they're not just emotional responses. They become part of our bodily response. A strong anxiety, panic attack, that takes place in our nervous system. It's a nervous system fight or flight response. But that fight or flight response might show up in a strong jealousy case of insecurity. It might show up in anger. You can see the physical body response just in the posture, say, of a depressed person or an angry person, the way their muscles tense, the way their veins bulge out. Their nervous system is embodying this whole force of a belief system and expressing it. And this is very common in instances where there's been trauma, either from physical abuse or sexual abuse. We've learned to respond to them through our nervous system. So in this case, we have to actually work to change the way our physical body responds. Some methods for changing how our nervous system responds might include EMDR treatments, somatic or myofascial body work. These are ways to address the cellular memory and the nervous system response. As you venture into exploring belief systems, there's something really important to understand. They're not at all simple things like thoughts or ideas. In a way, when we have a belief, it's much like being hypnotized. Being hypnotized is much more than an idea in our head. When we get hypnotized with a belief that we're a chicken, or someone's hypnotized with a belief that they're a chicken, a person acts, feels, behaves under the spell of the suggestion of that belief. Their head and body moves in a way that a chicken moves. They make sounds like a chicken makes. The most tricky thing about when you're hypnotized by some unconscious belief, you don't know that you're hypnotized. The other thing that happens is, under the spell of that belief, you can no longer tell what the truth is. If someone says, "You're not a chicken," you go, "Yes, I am." So you deny the truth. We aren't dealing with the beliefs that are obvious of behaving like a chicken. They have to do with what we believe about ourselves, judgments about ourselves, opinions about other people that make us frustrated or angry, expectations that are unreasonable, that we might believe very much are reasonable. And so in this regard, they're harder to see. So if you want to effectively change a belief, you have to get down to the core belief. And to do that, you investigate the layers. You have to change the emotion that's not just associated at the top level, but you have to change the emotion that's associated at all the levels. You have to change the identity. You have to actually shift your perspective out of this person that feels worthless or believes it's stupid and recover your faith, the power of conviction about every one of those thoughts at every one of those layers. And in some cases where typically that were created in traumatic events in our past, we have to address what's going on in the nervous system and the cellular memory in the body. So if there's negative thinking, emotional reactions, or behaviors you want to change, and you want to get at the root cause, which is the core beliefs that drive these emotional reactions, behaviors, and negative thinking, you can find a comprehensive tool set at my self-mastery course at pathwaytohappiness.com or in my book, MindWorks, A Practical Guide to Changing Thoughts, Beliefs, and Emotional Reactions. This is Gary Van Warmerdam from pathwaytohappiness.com.